Now we can get started. Good morning. Hope everybody had a great 3-day weekend, and we started the week with a little bit of rain. So it does rain in San Diego, Secretary. So this is the first of a series of a new program called our Leadership Series. And our intent is to invite all of you to participate in having a dialogue about transportation issues that affect not just the region, but also the state. And this is kind of an evolution of an external advisory committee that we had. That was a much smaller group, but we are expanding it to include stakeholders from all corners of the region. So again, the intent is to have an open dialogue. So we are going to share some information, but also we expect you to participate at the end with some questions. And I think in the ground rules, we can dial a friend if we have questions that we cannot answer. So we have plenty of friends here. Other than that, we're going to get started. And I wanted to let you know that today we're setting the bar really high for this program because we invited the top transportation official in the state. That's the Secretary of the California State Transportation Agency, David Kim. He oversees a workforce of about 40,000 strong, I think, spread among 8 agencies and as well as commissions. And he brings a lot of knowledge from the private and the public sector, having worked as vice president for the Hyundai Corporation for 2 years. And prior to that, working at Federal Highways Administration in very top roles for 8 years. So without any further delay, please welcome Secretary David Kim.
Well, good morning. It's great to see you all this morning. Thank you so much, Gustavo, for organizing this forum, and it's really an honor to be a part of this leadership forum. As Gustavo mentioned, the California State Transportation Agency is a fairly large agency. A lot of people still don't know it exists because it used to be called the Business Transportation and Housing Agency until there was a massive reorganization in 2013. And so CalSTA is the organization that oversees a lot of different agencies, including Caltrans, CHP, and I'm so glad to see a strong CHP presence here this morning. California High-Speed Rail Authority, DMV, and California Transportation Commission, and a bunch of other organizations. So it is a very large organization, about 20,000 Caltrans employees, 10,000 CHP, almost 10,000 DMV. And so you add that up and it's 40,000 altogether. It's a very large organization. And it's a real honor to help lead the organization and the efforts. Did you know that 100 years ago, January 1920, the era of prohibition started? So exactly 100 years ago, and it was the policy of the federal government to prohibit the manufacture, sale, and transportation of what they called intoxicating liquors. That was the word they used. And I don't remember it. I wasn't around in 1920. None of you were around either. But according to the history books, prohibition lasted 13 years and it did not go very well because there were all sorts of bootlegging operations around the country, speakeasies, and it ended rather unceremoniously in 1933. And so here we are today. And I mention that only because transportation has always been involved in the transport of everything, including, as the federal government called it intoxicating liquors in 1920. And obviously we're involved in it today as well, in terms of transporting all sorts of beverages, whether alcoholic or not. And so transportation is everywhere in our lives. And, you know, it's really great to be here in District 11 because as I've come to learn, it is a vast region, so much here. And it really epitomizes what we're all about as transportation officials. A huge area from the California-Mexico border all the way to the Arizona border, and it reaches north to Orange and Riverside counties. And then while the beautiful beaches of San Diego may be seen as the focal point of District 11, it really goes much beyond that to the mountain areas, to desert areas, agriculture in Imperial County. And so it is really an incredible area. And when you talk about transportation assets, this district has it all. 100,000 centerline miles of highway in urban and rural areas, a very extensive transit network. You've got the trolley system here, light rail and commuter rail, international seaports and airports, 6 land port of entry, including the largest in the world at San Isidro, the #1 port of entry for international truck crossing at Lotay Mesa, and 19 federally recognized American tribal governments located on 20 reservations. So that's pretty amazing. And District 11 truly epitomizes the multimodal, highly interconnected, and international nature of 21st century transportation. And the work of keeping people and goods moving every day, developing new projects and protecting the environment simply cannot be done by one organization or person or entity. It involves any combination of international, federal, state, local, tribal, nonprofit, and the business community as well to deliver all of this. And so I'm really grateful for the work you're doing, Gustavo, and your team here at District 11. And it's just really great to be here. I want to give you a brief update on Governor Newsom's budget, which just came out about a week and a half ago. It's the 2020-21 budget. I also want to highlight what we're doing at CalSTA to implement a transportation vision expressed through recent executive orders issued by the governor. I think we all know that California is grappling with a severe housing crisis, and access to affordable transportation options is absolutely key to that equation. I think you all know that we have a growing phenomenon here in California of extreme commuters, people who live far away from where they work. Perhaps some of you fall into that category. And as a result, there are all sorts of negative consequences that stem through that. Obviously, quality of life being one of them, sacrificing quality of life in order to get from home to work. And on top of that, it is exacerbating wear and tear on our aging highways and also increasing greenhouse gas emissions, which really drives climate change. But these challenges also present opportunities for innovative solutions as the transportation sector goes through massive change through electrification, automation, and other emerging technologies. And so to address these issues, the governor's budget includes $27 billion for CalSTA and its departments to continue to carry out all of the transportation investments that we're doing and to continue the work of all of the departments here. This includes $5.4 billion in voter-approved SB1 funding to maintain and repair what we have, as well as to embark on transformative investments. It includes $3.5 billion for existing assets to keep them in good shape, and also $1.9 billion for transit and rail, active transportation, trade corridor enhancements, and other projects. The governor's budget also provides bold direction to address climate change, consistent with the governor's executive order on climate change, which came out last September. I think we all know that California's largest source of emissions and greenhouse gas emissions come from gasoline and diesel-fueled cars and trucks. And so if we're going to make progress in terms of carbon neutrality, it's going to take investment and innovation in all areas of transportation, everything from fuels to vehicles to reducing vehicle miles traveled. On top of that, millions of Californians continue to breathe unhealthy air from transportation pollution every day. We need to address this public health emergency, and the governor's budget does exactly that. It makes numerous investments to achieve that goal. Also, the budget includes $1.4 billion in continuing funding from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund for critical rail and transit investments. And this includes things like California High-Speed Rail, Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, also known as TIRCP, the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, and the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program. The budget will also accelerate the transition to clean vehicle programs and fleets by investing $400 million in GGRF direct grants. And what I'm really excited about is a brand new feature in the governor's budget called the Climate Catalyst Revolving Loan Fund. And so this is really going to jumpstart more investment when it comes to zero emission vehicles as well as infrastructure. So when you think about transit agencies that are trying to make that transition to zero emission buses and rail cars, This is the kind of fund that will help them get there. Finally, it is often said that a budget is a value statement, and that as we make choices about allocating resources, those choices really reveal who we are and what we believe in. And so I'm so proud that the governor has proposed a massive shift in the state's augmentation of local government efforts to house and shelter the homeless. We all know that homelessness is a complex problem. And so naturally, a lot of the solutions that we think about are things like housing, social services, public health programs, and job placement. Those are obviously key, but I want to say that transportation is going to play its part as well. And all of us who work in transportation have a responsibility to be part of the solution, and we are going to do just that. And so to that end, the governor's executive order on homelessness, which came out about 2 weeks ago, directs Caltrans to build on its recent efforts to work with local governments, cities like San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland, to identify and work with local governments to make available Caltrans property that can then be a site for temporary emergency housing, and also work with local governments to make sure that individuals who are homeless have access to and can be connected to wraparound services, everything from health and mental health services and job placement. The governor has also directed Caltrans to share a model lease template with local governments to expedite additional partnerships to shelter the homeless. And just last week, in fact, on Thursday, the governor did a major event in Oakland. I was there for that, along with Caltrans Director Tokson Mishakin, where we previewed 15 travel trailers. These are conventional trailers that you would use to go camping. And Caltrans took the lead in transporting these trailers from Chico to Oakland. And these 15 trailers, which are now housed on city-owned property in Oakland, will be used to temporarily house the homeless. And that's a great example of the kind of partnerships that we need to really make a dent in this issue. And so that was the final event in the governor's week-long homelessness tour. He was in Riverside, LA, the Central Valley, Northern Grass Valley, and then Oakland. And throughout all of these events, he made the following critical points. The state of California is stepping up to the plate like never before. We own this crisis, and we are going to partner closely with local governments to advance a wide range of solutions. So I think that's really important, and we're going to take that and run with it, take that spirit and run with it, and we are doing that through the executive order and through the budget. I also want to mention that this is the first of 3 meetings I'll be having here in San Diego today. Later on today, we will be over at Sandag to convene a meeting of the Lausanne Regional Rail Corridor Working Group. And this is an effort to address the situation at Mar Bluffs. I think many of you are familiar with it. The Lausanne Rail Corridor is one of the most significant rail corridors in the country, second in ridership only to the Northeast Corridor, and it carries huge amounts of passenger traffic as well as freight traffic. I think many of you are also aware that the Mar Bluffs are at risk. Every time there's a rainstorm or major storm, there is greater risk of erosion and bluff failure, and that in turn will then threaten the long-term viability of the Lausanne Rail Corridor. And so that's the challenge in front of us, and we have a situation that needs attention right away, both in terms of short-term and long-term solutions. So that's why we are convening this working group, along with some of you here in this room, including Sandag and others, to help develop solutions and come up with a plan for both short-term as well as long-term options. So that's a critical meeting, and my team and I look forward to collaborating with many of you here in this room to develop a path forward. Finally, I think it's really important to underscore the fact that this region plays an absolutely critical role in maintaining cultural and commercial ties with Mexico that benefit the state of California as well as the entire country. Mexico continues to be California's #1 export market. In fact, 17% of all California exports are purchased by Mexico. That's about $31 billion as of 2018. And just last December, the governors of California, Baja California Norte, and Baja California Sur signed a memorandum of understanding that reestablishes the Commission of the Californias. And this is a body that will bring the region together to share information around common issues it will also focus on developing common solutions, especially when it comes to transportation and infrastructure. I want to read a short quote by Governor Newsom, which really captures the spirit of what the commission is all about. This is what he said. Today, as many seek to divide us, the interconnection between our states is more important than ever. This MOU will create a forum to open doors for business and cultural exchanges within a region whose economies, histories, and conventions are inseparable. They will strengthen existing connections and grow new ones. So I think that's really exciting, and I encourage all of you to follow the work of the Commission of the Californias and be a part of this effort to strengthen ties and keep the region well connected. And in that spirit, later this morning, in fact, I think in this room, we'll be kicking off the Baja California 2021 Border Master Plan. The Border Master Plan is a binational comprehensive roadmap for the United States and Mexico to coordinate planning and delivery of transportation improvements along the border, Baja California border. And this is something that I helped lead when I was at the Federal Highway Administration when I co-chaired the U.S.-Mexico Joint Working Committee on Transportation Planning. So it's a real thrill to come back in this new role to be re-involved in the effort to plan border infrastructure projects. Let me close by saying that I truly value your partnership, and I really believe that collaboration and communication are the keys as we collectively tackle the many challenges in front of us. The challenges are plentiful and they are complex, but with challenge comes opportunity, and I have no doubt that all of us working together will rise to the occasion. Your leadership is critically important for the region and for the state to move together. And so with that, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
All right, are we ready for questions, or do you need a few seconds to think about a few things? I just want to thank Secretary Kim. I think a lot of the things that he said resonate a lot with us, especially the last one, partnerships. We pride ourselves in this district to have a great partnership with both of our MPOs, both at Sandag and in Imperial Valley with ICPC. We've been working together for many years, developing projects and seeing transportation evolve from what used to be, our department used to be a division of highways, and now it's really a true Department of Transportation, working along with Hassan and his team at Sandag, developing the regional transportation plan that we need to be able to meet the greenhouse emissions that the state has, the goals that the state has set. So we're working very closely with that team to come up with a new plan, a revolutionary plan, and developing further, fine-tuning what Sandag calls are the 5 big moves. So we're also working with MTS on their proposed measure called Elevate San Diego. We have a track of success helping MTS develop transit projects like the 2 bus rapid transit projects that operate on our state highways, including having centerline stations on both El Cajon and University on State Route 15. I also wanted to mention something that Secretary Kim mentioned. We got a new director, Tokso Mishaken. He comes with a great plan for the state. One of the things that he brought up is safety, and that's something that hits close to San Diego. We've had a string of fatalities recently on our state highway system, and that's something that we need to take a closer look and try to do something about. If you saw an article on the paper today, also on city streets, the city is coping with similar issues with pedestrian deaths. So we're going to continue. We vow to continue working with our local partners and our enforcement agencies as well, to see if there's anything else that we can do. Some of it rests with the drivers themselves, and drivers need to be careful, need to take responsibility. On a day like today, people need to slow down, take a little more time. But if there's anything we can do on the system, we're not going to leave any stone unturned. We will keep working on that. So having said that, We got our first question. All right, let me bring the mic. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Zubair. I'm a county traffic engineer, and I truly want to thank you for the leadership that you bring in and the way that the new administration look at transportation that, in my mind, is not only a road, but it's a place for the community, and that's really is important. And also want to thank you, and you show by the budget that you are giving to, for example, the active transportation, that's really is about other users that are vulnerable in our roadway, and it's very important that we consider them. So in that spirit, I want to know if you have position on setting the speed limit and the old way of using only the 85th percentile. Does the state now has other factors that's gonna be in law that we can respond to communities? And I say it because I have a lot of experience in setting speed limit, and it's so dry that it's so hurtful that you always tell the community that's the way it is. That's the way we're gonna do it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the question. I'm glad you asked it, and it dovetails with what Gustavo said about safety. We are on the verge of releasing a report called the Zero Traffic Fatalities Task Force Final Report. This was mandated by AB 2363, a bill by Assemblymember Laura Friedman. And that report, without giving away too much, because I really can't, because it's not out publicly yet, but that report is going to be groundbreaking. So that's all I can say at this point. Be on the lookout for that report. It will get into a wide range of issues, including the one you referenced, the 85th percentile for establishing speed limits. It's going to be groundbreaking. And so stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be in a position to release that report in the coming weeks.
Hi, my name's Jacqueline Appleton Dean. I work at Caltrans. Can you talk a little bit more about our role in the homeless crisis that we're facing?
Thanks, Jacqueline. Yes, it's Caltrans is playing a central role in addressing the homelessness crisis. As I mentioned, Caltrans owns quite a few properties, some of which are surplus throughout the state. You also see homeless encampments set up everywhere up and down California. And as you know, Caltrans has a policy of working with CHP to clear homeless encampments, but we want to do it in a way that is compassionate. We want to do it in a way that enables homeless individuals to be connected with services. And we've seen situations where encampments have been cleared, only then to find that piece of property or parcel occupied again within 24 hours. And so it's not really solving the problem. So I think there are ways we can partner with local governments to make sure that people have access to services, whether they be healthcare, mental health, job placement, you name it, housing, of course, temporary housing. And so that's a critically important role that Caltrans can play. As I mentioned, Caltrans helped, they took the lead in transporting these travel trailers from Chico to Oakland just last week, and that will continue. So we're going to be involved, and it's obviously a tricky situation where you have homeless encampments everywhere, including here in San Diego. On the one hand, they do need to, for safety reasons, we do need to address that. On the other hand, there's a compelling need to make sure that people who are homeless are connected to the services that I mentioned.
If I could add just one more thing, at a district level, we're organizing in alignment with the executive order. Mark Phelan, Mark, can you raise your hand? He's our point of contact regarding the executive order for the district. We've convened also a group of deputies, including maintenance right away, to be able to work with our headquarters to come up with an action plan to address that issue.
I should also add that many of our transportation partners are also involved on the transit side. You've got agencies like LA Metro, BART, SAC-RT establishing homeless outreach teams. So they are actively reaching out to homeless individuals who are riding their system and trying to provide assistance where possible. So those are the kinds of actions I am so grateful to see many of our transit agencies doing, and I think more of that is needed.
Hi, good morning. Chris Schmidt from Caltrans. Nice to see you, David. We've met, we've spoken many times. Question, not a softball one, but maybe a little hardball. I'm the SB 743 coordinator for the state, working on, having induced travel, VMT included in our CEQA process. We've been going out talking to a lot of CEOs from our regional partners, kind of what we're doing here today. And one of the things we hear a lot about is sort of the difficulty of balancing and figuring out this contradiction between what we're trying to do for climate change and what we're trying to do for housing. So as we have new regional housing needs assessment targets that the state has provided to the regions, we need to build many, many more houses, 3.5 million units that the governor has kind of set as a goal. And at the same time, we're trying to figure out how to not only provide the housing, but also reduce GHG from transportation. And that conflict is really, really troubling to our regional partners. They're trying to do both, but they're really struggling with that. So I don't know if you have some thoughts on that and could share some ideas.
Thanks, Chris. I think you hit on the tricky balancing act between housing and climate change, and it is complex. In fact, we've asked the UC Institute of Transportation Studies to do some research into this. What I'd like to know is what kinds of transportation investments make the most sense when it comes to encouraging greater housing development. How do we best use our transportation dollars, our discretionary transportation dollars, to encourage more housing in the right places? And of course, at the same time, to reduce VMT, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, all of those things. Can we do that in a comprehensive way? Can transportation investments be the solution from a housing and climate standpoint? So that's what we're looking at. I don't have any magic answers for you, but I think you hit on the challenge in front of all of us. So look forward to continuing to work together with you and your team, Chris.
I'm gonna call on some people.
Thanks, Secretary Kim, welcome. Teddy Jackson with Sandag. Could you give us an update on high-speed rail and what kind of impacts or what that could mean for San Diego?
Thanks, Teddy. High-speed rail is a major priority for the governor. Construction is underway now between Merced and Bakersfield. And I've seen the project. There are visible signs of progress on the project, viaducts being built, track being laid, all of those things. And so this is a huge economic boost to a region that sorely needs it, the Central Valley. 3,000 jobs have already been created, 500 small businesses working on the project. So this is going to be the backbone eventually for the rail system in California, which will connect to regional services like Metrolink, like the ones down here, like commuter rail systems in the Bay Area, Caltrain. So that's the vision. We have the funding to complete the first segment in the Central Valley, and we'll keep going forward. Also, the environmental work on what's called the bookend projects, that's Southern California and the Bay Area. All that environmental work will be done within the next 18 to 24 months. So this project is moving, and it's going to make a difference. And it's going to transform, truly transform the way Californians travel in California.
Good morning, Richard Chavez with Sandag, and we're working on our big 5 moves, our new regional vision for transportation in the San Diego region. And one of those big 5 moves is complete corridors. And a component of that is converting general purpose lanes to managed lanes on the freeway system. And just wondering, what your reaction is to that and how much support we might get from the state on that.
Well, first of all, I am really inspired by the vision laid out by Hassan and all of you at Sandag. Big 5 moves. I heard a lot about it. I've talked to Hassan about it, and it's truly inspiring. So keep up the great work. When it comes to managed lanes, we have to explore all of those options. And so when it comes to hot lanes, express lanes, I think they're all on the table. And we've seen successful results in places like LA. I worked for LA Metro over 10 years ago when Metro was just beginning its express lanes demonstration project on the 10 and 110 freeways. There was a lot of skepticism at first. People didn't think it was going to work, but now, look at it now. It is wildly successful. There is so much demand for that program. And so Metro is going to expand it to other freeways in LA County. So I think there's a role for it, and I think it plays an important role. And so I think it's worth looking at here in San Diego as part of your Big Five moves.
Good morning, Secretary Dennis LaSalle. I represent ACC San Diego chapter and the Caltrans Small Business Council here in District 11. So now that you touched on small business, it'd be interesting to see what your budget includes for the increased participation of small business and DP companies in the work here in Caltrans.
I can get back to you on that. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but clearly using and working with small businesses is critically important for Caltrans and for all of us. And I, for one, am interested in making sure that we do everything possible to partner with small businesses to make sure that they are a part of these very important projects. So thanks for the question.
Good morning. This is Jose Marquez from Caltrans. You mentioned transformative projects. That agency would like to support transformative projects. What do you consider a transformative project to be?
That's a great question. And I think your question is consistent with the vision we've laid out at CalSTA. And I think I committed this to memory. Our new vision is to transform the lives of all Californians through a safe, accessible, low carbon, 21st century multimodal transportation system. So that's our vision. And so in line with your question, I would say a transformative project is something that truly transforms the lives of Californians. Will this project make a difference in your life? If so, how? Will it change your life? Hopefully it will change your life for the better. So that's how I would look at it. If a project changes people's lives, transforms their lives, makes their lives better, then it probably fits the definition of transformative.
Yes, questions, Ray.
Good morning, Secretary Kim. My name is Gerard Chadurjian. I'm the District Division Chief of Traffic Operations at the Transportation Management Center. Welcome. My question to you, and maybe just a comment, as going back to the safety aspect of it and connected and automated vehicles, can you touch a little bit about what the state's future is for automated vehicles? Where are we headed? And how much effort are we doing with the federal government as well?
Thanks for the question. Yes, autonomous and connected vehicles, a critical area. We are focused on it. We have convened a cabinet level working group along with other agencies and state government to look at that issue and to develop a statewide policy framework and vision for how we want to see connected and autonomous vehicles being deployed in the future. There are so many considerations. Obviously, Caltrans is involved, CHP, DMV, but beyond the CalSTA family, we've got representation from other agencies, Labor and Workforce Development, Health and Human Services, CPUC, and others. So it's really cross-cutting because we all know that connected and autonomous vehicles will change the way people move and will have an impact in all areas of life. Not just safety, not just transportation, but the workforce of the future will change. And so much will change when autonomous and connected vehicles are fully deployed. So we are in that process right now of developing that statewide policy framework and vision. Really excited about it. And we need to make sure that California remains in the forefront of innovation. There are, as you know, many autonomous vehicle developers based in California. And we want to make sure that they have the room to innovate while at the same time making sure that our roads are safe and that those who use them are safe. So more to come on that. It's a very exciting area. And I feel like as a state, we have to get it right. We have to have that right policy framework and vision.
Secretary Adrian Granda, and on behalf of Mayor Kevin Faulkner and the City of San Diego, welcome to San Diego. Thank you very much for being here. I want to ask a question that's already been asked, but kind of in a slightly different way. My boss has been in the middle of a very lively debate at Sandag and other venues. This, kind of balancing act between reducing congestion and getting folks from rural areas to urban centers and job centers, versus, making sure we're meeting our greenhouse gas reduction goals. We have a very ambitious climate action plan here in the city of San Diego. So how are some of the ways the state can help reduce VMT, which we know is a proxy for GHG?
Thanks, Adrian. I think there are a number of areas we need to look at. Transit and commuter rail. We need to do everything we can to increase and encourage greater multimodal use. And so to that end, we need to do everything possible to expand transit. We already have a lot in the budget for that purpose through the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program and other things in the budget. But the more we can do on transit, the better it's going to be when it comes to reducing VMT and encouraging mode shift as well. And I will say, and this is part of the governor's executive order on climate change, we have to get serious about looking at pricing strategies. And I know that's not popular, but if we're going to get serious about reducing VMT, reducing GHG, and encouraging greater use of other modes of transportation, pricing strategies must be looked at. Whether it's cordon pricing, congestion pricing, hot lanes, you name it, there's a place for it. And it's great that there are some places in California, in the Bay Area and LA, looking seriously at congestion pricing, cordon pricing. It won't be popular with the voters and with the public, but it's important. And we have to look at it. And I think all options have to be on the table.
Good morning, Alejandra with the Otay Mesa Chamber. Related to the climate change and is the state not looking at eventually mandating everyone to use electric vehicles and then the problem would go away?
There was legislation that would have proposed the elimination of the internal combustion engine by 2040. That bill did not make it, but the state of California has very ambitious climate goals. The goal is 5 million electric vehicles by 2030. We have a little ways to go to meet that goal. And then on the transit side, every transit agency must transition to zero emission fleet by 2040. And transit agencies are actively involved in making that transition now. We're working very closely to make sure they have the resources to build maintenance facilities and charging stations. And so a lot is being done on that front. To mandate, as you say, would require legislation. I don't know if a bill is going to be introduced this year or not, but there was a bill last year which did not make it. Obviously, a little controversial. And when it comes to adoption and acceptance of zero emission vehicles, we're doing everything we can to promote them. I drive a hydrogen fuel cell myself. Great car. We still need to expand the hydrogen network. There are 40 hydrogen stations throughout California. Thousands of electric vehicle charging stations up and down the state, but we need to do more to expand that network to make it more convenient for Californians to drive zero emission vehicles.
Good morning, Secretary Kim. Dave Zajac, Department of Navy. Good morning and welcome. What are some areas that CalSTA can partner with the Navy? As you're aware, we've got specific strategic sustainability goals and objectives that are innovative. How do you see a path forward with the Department of Navy and the Department of Defense working with CalSTA to align with your multimodal strategies and actually make the strategic sustainability initiatives come to light and come to fruition?
Well, I know the Navy has a huge presence here in San Diego, and in fact, I had the great pleasure of meeting with a number of your colleagues just a few months ago. They're from the Coronado area, and we talked about local plans, both on the transportation and housing side. And so we are fully committed to working closely with the Navy, especially here in the San Diego Coronado area, to address some of those challenges and see how we can partner together.
Secretary Kim, my name is Danielle Zhang. I'm from the other side of transportation design instead of civil engineer. I'm a landscape associate here at the Caltrans. So I have a quick question in terms of San Diego also as this part of the Southern California. I live in many metropolitan area, including Manhattan. So write a book, Smart Street, the rise of the city and fall of the cars. So in your opinion, in San Diego, we have our own challenges versus some other area in US and in the world. So what's the most challenges because that's really help with the transit, with public transit, and to deal with the housing crisis as well. But what do you think in terms of geographically location of San Diego is the most challenging to meet that after 40 some years, Manhattan as it is today versus 40 some years back, and it's definitely transformed to a much better livable community. Thank you.
Well, in fact, it's really interesting if you go to New York or Manhattan to see the changes taking place there, where New York was a city designed and built for the automobile many years ago, and with parkways and bridges and everything else. And now you have a situation where the city is gradually changing and closing certain streets to vehicular traffic, making them open accessible only for pedestrians and bicyclists, major thoroughfares in New York like Broadway. And so New York is trying to transform itself into a more pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly city, in a city choked with traffic and gridlock at all hours of the day. So I find New York City to be a fascinating case study of what is possible in terms of how do you transform a city, how do you change the overall feel and look, and how do you change the way people move. So if it's possible in New York, it is possible in places like San Diego and LA, where gridlock and congestion have been the way of life for far too long. And it won't happen overnight. And I know San Diego, like many cities in California, were built many years ago. Our highway system was built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so we have what we have. And the question is, how do we reimagine a place like San Diego where congestion can be minimized, where people have more options, more travel options, and quality of life improves. So I think there's a way to do it, and we only need to look to other cities as great examples.
Roy Flores, we're here with Caltrans. I was also the president of PEG a few years back, and I wanted to thank you because every time we'd send a delegation up there, especially to talk to FHWA, you were always willing to attend the meeting, and you were very welcoming back then. So when we heard that you were picked for Secretary of STA, we were really excited. So thank you for all that you've done for us in the past. My question is the federal transportation reauthorization bill. Have you guys given it any thought, or has there been any input into it? Anything you can say about it?
Yes, indeed. That's a huge area of focus for us. And the state of California has established a series of reauthorization principles for the reauthorization of the FAST Act. I want to recognize Giles Jonavazzi on my team. Wave your hand, Giles. And Giles used to be the chief of staff at Caltrans. He is now senior advisor at CalSTA. He led the effort to develop these principles in partnership with our local agencies, MPOs, transit agencies, and cities and counties as well. So we do have a series of reauthorization principles. We have communicated those principles to the California congressional delegation. I was in Washington a couple months ago to meet with members. We'll be going back again next month to really call attention to California's needs in the next reauthorization of the FAST Act. As you know, the FAST Act expires this fall, but in all likelihood, Congress will have to pass an extension. They probably will not be able to pass a full reauthorization bill between now and October. Nevertheless, we'll be back there to make sure that our delegation and other members outside of California, like the chairman of the House Transportation Committee from Oregon, we want to make sure they are fully aware of California's priorities, and we'll be back there early and often to make those points.
Secretary, it's nice to have you here, and welcome to the South and the border region. Couple of things. One is I from Imperial like to advocate your help and the state's help to implement charging stations. We have no public charging stations in Imperial. And so that's a challenge. And then going back to the issue of SB 743, you know, I think we've shared with you some type of agencies have concerns about what will be the mitigation requirements for resulting from SB 743. I know your team is working on the guidance for SB 743, and we're waiting for those guidance soon. But we also want to make sure that we have an opportunity to have a good discussion following that release of those guidance.
Thanks, Mark. It's good to see you. On charging stations, yes, we have to do more in Imperial County to make sure that your residents have access to EV charging stations, maybe even hydrogen as well. So we're fully committed to working with you to address that. On SB 743, you're right. That's a work in progress through Chris's help and leadership. Guidance is being developed. So at this point, there's not a lot we can talk about, but we are fully committed to continuing the dialogue and engaging with you and other local transportation agencies, MPOs, CTCs to work through them. We know this is an area of concern and some challenge as well as they are implemented. And this summer is the time where they need to be implemented per state law. But we'll continue the dialogue and we'll continue to work with you.
All right, it's almost time to wrap up. So we're gonna need some time to set up the room for the border master plan update. I wanted to acknowledge Secretary Karen Postlewhite from Baja California, who joined us. She's here also for our border master plan update. So if you have any last minute question you wanna ask, this is your chance. Otherwise, we're gonna call this up.